Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Gibbs. I am the Associate Director of Technology for Enterprise Systems and the Technical Manager at the Sam Walton College of Business at the University of Arkansas. And today's presentation is of our paper entitled, If You Build It, They Will Come, responding to a growing analytics program with SAS Viya. Before I begin, I do want to recognize my co-author, Dr. Ron Fries, also instructor at the University of Arkansas, Sam Walton College of Business. And he's unable to be with us today due to some scheduling conflict, but I do want to extend my appreciation to him in this work and in this presentation. So let's begin. Before we begin, what I want to do is kind of give you the backdrop on who we are and what we do. And you might have heard, Walton College of Business, and that, of course, is where we are, the Sam Walton College of Business. And I bring up the mission to you here, the mission of the Sam Walton College of Business. And you can see there, to advance and disseminate business knowledge using a diverse, inclusive, and global perspective to encourage innovation in our primary strategic endeavors, retail, data analytics, and entrepreneurship. I bring up data analytics, and I want to make sure I highlight that to show you that what we've done here at the University of Arkansas, Walton College of Business, with the support of our leadership through its mission, they've been very focused on data analytics and equipping our students, to be working in a world where data and data analytics and data-based decisions are being made in all organizations. And so what this presentation is to show kind of how we've leveraged and used SAS Viya to accommodate and to fulfill that mission of the Walton College. We also have the Walton College Enterprise Systems, of which I'm a part. This was founded many years ago by two professors in the Department of Information Systems, Dr. Paul Cronin, and Dr. David Douglas. And what we wanted to do, what the goal of Enterprise Systems is to bring together corporate data with supplier technology, and then, of course, the students as well. So bringing academic, corporate, and vendor supplier together in a cohesive environment in which we can give our students the very best when it comes to data and analytic platforms. There you see most of all of our platforms, Teradata, Microsoft, et cetera, and of course SAS is one of those partners. And we've teamed up with SAS for many years. They've been so gracious to us and so supportive of what we're doing here at the university, and I'm just happy and thrilled just to be a part of it. So there you see, this is kind of how it's laid out. We have data that we get from our corporations. We have platforms and technology that are either purchased or gifted, depending on the supplier. And then, of course, all of those supplier groups and those student groups that we support, not only here at the University of Arkansas, but globally, worldwide. If you were with us last year at the last year's presentation, this slide might be a little familiar to you. This is, before we start talking about SAS Viya, I wanted to give a very quick look back into where we've gone or where we've been. While our relationship with SAS has really, it started many years ago in the 90s, this timeline here kind of shows you the last 8 years or so in which we did a very much improved delivering of SAS and SAS technology to our students. It kind of started in 2012 with the deployment of SAS 9.3, and then various upgrades and different tools were added to our tool set to expose our students with the latest and greatest in technology. But of course, since today's paper and today's presentation is about SAS Viya, that's where our focus is going to be. So I'm going to be talking about how we went about deploying SAS Viya, sort of that process. Talk about what worked and what didn't work, or what were some of the challenges and hurdles, and how were they overcome. I can tell you that as someone who's a kind of a systems administrator by heart, that while it did present some challenges, and there's always challenges with working with any sort of technology, the support around me and the support not only from the college but also with SAS has been nothing short of extraordinary. So I appreciate them for being on this trip with me into SAS Viya. You'll also notice in this slide here that we deployed SAS Viya in 2018, kind of spring of 2018, and there you see some of the tools that we deployed as part of the Viya platform: visual analytics, visual statistics, data studio, etc. And that's where we're going to focus our energy today for the remainder of the presentation. One of the things I like to, one of the statements that I like to live by when doing my job is to deliver technology that meets a need or has a purpose for what we're trying to achieve. And we were seeing in 2017, 2018, even 2016, we saw increased growth in our undergraduate analytics program, our graduate analytics program, and not only that, but also students from all walks of life, kind of different departments, marketing, economics, finance, who were very much interested in learning about data and data analytics. And so we saw this increased growth. And so we were kind of were scratching our heads and kind of think about what kind of tool set or what kind of technology can we deliver to our students that span across the entire college, regardless of major, whether it's finance or information systems, while at the same time providing cutting edge technology. We always wanted to stay out in front, kind of on the bleeding edge, if you will, of technology. And at the end of the day, provide students with a powerful tool for analytics. And most importantly, and this is something I adhere to immensely, is an exceptional user experience. And so we were kind of thinking through our next, where do we go from here? Now we have SAS 9.4, we have SAS Visual Analytics. Where's the next step? And with respect to SAS, the choice was obvious. And so we started looking at this product, this SAS Viya, after talking with some instructors at SAS and some other folks with the global academic global initiative, and very supportive and very, very helpful in sort of helping us decide where we go from here. And so we went on this journey, and of course, with anything technology-wise, there is certainly value in research and development and testing and playing. But at the end of the day, since we are wanting to be good stewards of our resources, of our funds, of our technology, we needed to answer the why. Why SAS Viya, and why now, and what were we going to gain as a result of deploying this system and this platform for our students? And I can kind of sum it up with these 5 bullet points here. The first, we saw SAS Viya as a amazing solution in which students could access the tool regardless of device, location, or time. Put another way, when you have technology, or technologists like to talk about anywhere, anytime, on any device. Well, SAS Viya meets that need. All the students have to access our environment is an internet connection. If they have an internet connection, they can access Viya regardless of if they're on campus, off campus, in another state, or even in another country. And so that was huge for us. We also were very attracted to this continuation, this idea of in-memory data access and computing. We experienced that with visual analytics and the laser, but when we went to Viya, that of course was paramount in us kind of moving forward with that. At the end of the day, what we saw Viya as doing was providing an end-to-end solution, and that is in an environment for which students from the data acquisition to the data preparation to the data and analytics to the modeling, it provided our students with an end-to-end solution that would give them soup to nuts, beginning to end, of the data curation and data analytic process. And so that's another thing. And of course, this is still a work in progress, but our compatibility with open source tools, we've seen a need with students who are needing access to using Python and R and other open source tools, and scalable. We wanted something that is going to grow as we grow. And so that's another reason why Viya was so attracted to us, with this idea of multiple worker nodes and scalability based on the need. So we jumped in, kind of dipped our toe into it a little bit, and we started off the start of something big. And this is our first iteration of SAS Viya, was sort of a semi pseudo proof of concept, but actually being used in the classroom. We were going live with it, but we understood that this was our first pass. And so there you see this very simple diagram. This is taken from the SAS deployment guide for Linux, and it was a single server, single node. We threw everything on the server, and after a couple of trials and tribulations, we were able to bring it online and make it available to our students. So what worked in that iteration, that installation? Collaboration yields success. Well, I cannot speak more highly highly enough about the people that we were able to interact with at SAS. I won't mention them by name. I don't want to embarrass anyone, but had wonderful, wonderful people at SAS walking us through this first pass at deploying SAS Viya. It also it's also known, though, we also collaborated with our central IT here at the university as well, who provided resources and guidance on a few aspects of that deployment. It was quick to deploy. Now, quick is sort of a subjective term, and I bring that up because essentially we were putting everything on one server: our CAS controller, our services, our programming interface. And so having multiple servers, multiple nodes, having to be able to talk to each other, be secure between each other, wasn't necessary. So the path to get to deployment was quicker than if we had gone to a multi-node configuration. We also virtualized our environment, which we'll continue to do. I don't know of any solution that we have that is now running on bare metal. And so we have all of our Viya environment runs in a virtual space, which allows us the flexibility to add more resources nearly on the fly with certain, whether it be RAM or more processors, that sort of thing. And of course, access to the right tools. We were grateful to have the access that we needed to our Active Directory, to our domain controllers, et cetera, to really bring this environment online, to create the users that we needed to create to actually run Viya. And it was a success. There was, I think the response we got from students and other in our faculty were very positive, and to the point where we were using it fairly regularly on many of our classes, especially our capstone class, which I may talk about here in a little while. So that was our first pass, and I would call it successful. But of course, as with anything, and especially a program that is consistently growing, growth begets maturity and more growth. But of course, it's not without its challenges. So over the last 2 years, we've seen a substantial increase in the students that are going through our analytics program. One of my favorite classes to support here at the University of Arkansas is our analytics practicum course, where we give students access to real data from a business. And then that business works alongside, they are stakeholders, and they work alongside the student or student groups to solve a business problem using data. And one thing I've noticed with a lot of these industry folks, the people that bring us the data, is that the data is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so there's that call of, well, where can we put the data? How do we store the data? How do we secure the data? How do we analyze the data? And so we had to plan. We had to think ahead and look to see, okay, what is it going to take for us to support this class along with the other analytics courses and even other analytics courses that are yet to come online in the area of economics, and our program, our cross-college program in data science, which incorporates arts and sciences and engineering and business. And so we looked at that and they said, okay, well, we've got this really awesome new scalable environment. Let's build it out. Let's scale it out. And so our second pass to SAS Viya was what you see here. CAS controller, some worker nodes, a programming node, a service node, a 6-node SAS Viya cluster. And so we essentially threw more resources at the Viya platform. We incorporated this idea of multi-node to deliver more performance, better performance, and the ability to handle larger data sets, but also increased concurrency of our users. But the process was not without its challenges, as you can see here, and here are some of them. Probably the biggest one for me was just having consistent nodes across the landscape. And what I mean by that is having those users that you set up to actually run SAS Viya, like CAS and SAS, et cetera, that those were consistent, accessible from server to server, from node to node. Probably our biggest hurdle was getting our CAS controller to work with its worker nodes. We banged our head against the wall for a long time trying to figure that one out, and I'll give you the rest of the story here in just a moment. We were able to overcome it, and I'll tell you how we did here in just a moment. We also had this challenge of our users that exist in our Active Directory, users that existed in different organizational units in our Active Directory. So how do we bring those users together with these users and allow all the users to use SAS Viya? And so that was a bit of a challenge. Of course, getting to the data, we are grateful to have wonderful data warehouse platforms like Teradata, Microsoft SQL Server, and we were, one of the challenges was how do we get SAS Viya to connect to that platform, or to SQL Server, and more recently SAP HANA, and so presented its own little bit of challenge. And beyond that, of course, time is of the essence. We had about a 2-month deadline to get this upgraded, deployed, and ready for the next semester. And so there was a little bit of nervousness, but also a lot of excitement to see, can we do this? Can we really deploy based on what we've learned in the initial deployment? Can we make this new deployment happen? And I had no doubt in my mind, with the resources that we had, that even though there would be hurdles, and there were, we were able to deploy it in the time that that was acceptable for our faculty and for our students. And so, in fact, that's the environment that we're running today. There is still obviously more room for improvement, or more room for growth, but that's kind of where we are today. After this deployment, we took time to sort of reflect and what were the lessons that we learned in this secondary deployment, and really the first one too. And I'm going to go over these fairly quickly. One, assess the IT landscape. Know who your people are, your processes, and what technology resources that you have. Knowing the people that you need to contact and work with at Central IT to deliver the resources that you need to do this project successfully. Knowing what you have with respect to hardware and limitations with hardware. I cannot stress this enough, how important it was to communicate with our end users. I love the phrase, seek first to understand, then to be understood, and that I go into a lot of those meetings with that. I want to listen to them, listen to what they need and what they want, what they would really like to have, and then do what you can to make it happen. Know when to make the call. So the issue we had with the CAS controller and the worker nodes weren't talking to each other. We could not get it to work. And my manager, who's wonderful, she uses the phrase, you got to know when to call time of death. And what she means by that is at some point you got to just put your hands down and call the experts. And so working with SAS and their support team, we were able to resolve that issue relatively quickly. Also, of course, keeping stakeholders in the loop. We wanted to make sure that our faculty and even our students that were testing this environment were in the loop as to our progress, as to where things were, as to improvements or changes that we might have made. And of course, document. And I won't spend much time on document. We know that we need to document our processes, what worked, what didn't, and lessons learned. And so now what? We are looking at, of course, integrating with more of our data platforms, including SAP HANA, SQL Server, integrating with our open source, with R and Python. We are looking forward into possibly deploying Viya 3.4 or 3.5. We're currently running 3.4. At the end of the day, though, it's about delivering the solution to our users, and that's what we do. Thank you.